know where I'm going with it, which I guess every author sort of feels, part way through a project, is what the hell is this story about?
Yeah.
What am I doing?
Yeah.
I should be out doing this and I should be out doing that. But before you took on this project, and as I mentioned in the introduction, you were talking about being burnt out. What does burnout feel to Helen Garner?
Well, I think it was a sort of burnout that comes with age, because I'm 82 now, and I published 3 volumes of my diaries over the last 3 years, and so that wasn't a writing job. That was an editing job, basically, because it had been written years ago. But the book I did before that was called This House of Grief, and it was about a murder trial, a very painful and horrendous murder trial, and that went on, well, its various hearings went on for 7 years. And that's a hell of a long time. And I didn't realise until quite a while afterwards how exhausted I was by it and sort of emotionally wrung out. I felt that I didn't have anything more to say, or I'd lost heart.
That's a hard feeling to have.
Yeah, it's awful. But I think it's probably quite common for writers. I have lots of big gaps between books. I have to wait for something to happen in my life that I'm busting to write about. I can't just go, perhaps I'll write a book about that and start taking notes.
Well, I don't want to over hyperbole this. Being a writer myself, we're prone to doing these things. But did this save you a bit? Did this push you into
absolutely.
the next part of your life?
Yes, it totally did. I felt that it gave me... I had the most fun writing this book of anything I've ever written. I felt that I couldn't help feeling that I was kind of living off the life force of these boys. And they didn't know. Well, I think they might be really embarrassed to read the book and find out how emotional the whole thing was. They didn't.
Yeah, but that might be something when they're 50 years old or 60, they pick up this book again and say, I remember I was in that book.
Oh, that's
and
a nice
it hits them.
Or maybe then they'll be grateful rather than embarrassed. You mean?
Yeah. Maybe. It's certainly the beautiful connection between you and your grandson that you write about so beautifully in the book is so touching. What's that relationship like now? That as you've written the book, it's coming out. What's he say to you?
Oh, well, I think he liked the book, but he's embarrassed by it because, it reveals him in ways that, in a sense, because there are all these conversations between him and me in the car, coming and going from training and matches.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I want to jump in there. There was a conversation where he had run into a boy on the field about a year beforehand.
Oh, many years before.
Many years before, and the boy was concussed. And please tell us about that little story there, that the conversation that you had with your grandson.
Well, of course there's a lot of talk about concussion now, perhaps more than there ever has been, and there's a great deal of anxiety about it.
But it had stayed with him, hadn't it?
Yes, well, we were talking just generally about people getting knocked out, and he said to me, in a very low voice, he said, I concussed a kid once. And I said, what? When? And I think it was when he was in the under 10s. And I said, oh, my God, was he out cold? And he said, yeah, but no, I think he wasn't out cold. He described him. He said his head rolled and his eyes kind of rolled in his head. It was a horrible memory. And he just stated it to me. He didn't express emotion about it, except he said it in a low voice.
Yeah.
And he said, and he said everyone knew it was an accident. Like, it wasn't that he did hit the kid and he was concussed, but they'd gone down in a tackle or something. But it plainly was a memory, and you wouldn't forget that. You wouldn't forget seeing somebody's eyes roll back in their head.
Absolutely. I want to end on this because it's very important. The importance of the mullet in football, because he got a mullet halfway through the season, didn't he? Or just before they started playing.
Early in the season,
he got a mullet, and the description, if you can, I'm sure you can remember the reason why the mullet is so important in football.
Oh yeah, I think he said because when you run fast, you can feel your hair streaming behind you.
like a stallion on there. Helen, it is a gorgeous book, and it's kind of it's a warm afternoon out the back kind of book for me. Where you sit back and take your time. Savor every word. For that reason, I'm actually looking forward to reading it again. But I thank you very much for chatting to us.
Thanks, Justin. Thank you so much.
And go the mighty Flemington Colts. Who's he playing for next year?
Well, I'm not so sure about that because there's a long story behind that. I won't tell it now.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
I
Don't know. Negotiations are being
thank you for saying
Okay.
that, yeah.
Fine. Thank you. Helen Garner is the author. The Season is the book, and we thank her very much. It's 2 to 11. Rochelle Hunt, the host of the conversation.